Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the R&R Mama Show. I'm Andrea Fallon, midwife, child health nurse, NDC practitioner, holistic sleep coach, and mum of two little girls. And I'm really looking forward to diving in today to talk to you about toddler sleep, and specifically 3 things that I think you really need to know about toddler sleep. Let's just get straight into it today. I think the first thing is you really need to expect that you will get more comments to sleep train, or you won't get a lot of sympathy if you're having difficult nights after 1 year of age. And I think this is due to a poor general understanding of child development and toddler development. And it's also that people have quite high expectations of toddlers. They sort of like, well, the baby stage is done now. You've got a toddler, so, things need to start changing. Hi everyone, I can see a few people jumping on live now. We're just diving straight in today about toddler sleep. The first point is just expect to get more comments that, either more pressure to sleep train or a lack of sympathy, like more of that, you've created this, there's bad habits, what do you expect, those kind of, or just lack of a sympathy, lack of offers of help. Once you get after 1 year old, people just don't really understand toddler development, and there are that high expectations. So let's have a look first of all what is happening developmentally for toddlers, how that impacts sleep, and so we can get a better understanding of what we're dealing with. Obviously, there's quite a lot happening developmentally in the toddler age. So when I say toddlers, I know people have different definitions of toddlers, but from 12 months through to 3 is what I define as toddlers. So 1 to 3, and then we go into preschoolers. But toddler year, the 2 years of toddlerhood, obviously there's so much changing in that time. Firstly, we need to look at our little ones start to develop more of a sense of self. So they start to understand that they're their own person, and that they're separate from you, and also that they can start to challenge things, they can start to have opinions about things. Really, we see this a lot more from about 18 months of age, but still some little ones will start to protest things earlier than 18 months and start to have those bit of tantrums earlier than 18 months. So we know that they're experimenting, they're learning about the world, they're learning about boundaries, and they may start to refuse whatever it is that you're offering, whether that's you're offering the nap, you're offering bedtime, or whether they're just protesting about not wanting, their sandwich cut a certain way. We know that then if they're understanding that they're a separate person, that they still are experiencing some separation anxiety. Typically it starts to resolve from about 18 months of age, but certainly, that 12 to 18 months, they're still quite high in separation anxiety. So they understand now that you could leave and maybe you wouldn't come back, and that's scary to them. So there's the duality of toddlerhood, which is basically this push-pull between I'm an individual, I'm a person, I have things that I want to do, but actually also the world's really scary to me and I still need you. And so it's that constant push-pull between those two things that is the whole definition of being a toddler, really, and is why they behave how they behave. They still can't self-soothe very well at all. Some little ones might have some, they might have taken to a comforter, or they might have some sort of tools that they use to try and soothe. But from a brain point of view, the neocortex in the brain is still very immature, and that's why they're having tantrums. So when they become very emotional, the amygdala in the brain, which controls the emotional part, is very much the active part. That neocortex, which is the higher thinking, which is where we're able to reason and rationalize and think and calm our emotions back down, that's very immature. and really doesn't start to mature until the age of 3. So when we're looking at this age, we're looking at, still needing to co-regulate with us to help calm down. And so we'll talk more about how this impacts sleep in a minute, but that is something that's really important to know. The other thing is that they may still want to feed a lot. And I know that there's a push to move away from feeding to sleep, particularly with bottles at this age after 12 months. And look, I think with bottles, you do have to be mindful of the dental factor, that it does impact their teeth. But from if you're breastfeeding, it's still very normal for a toddler to want to breastfeed at night. And unfortunately, it's just not really spoken about because the rates of breastfeeding at this stage are quite low. So we don't hear much about it, but it is still normal that they want to feed at night. And we know that their nutritional needs can actually be largely met with breast milk. Even though we want to be encouraging solid food, actually breast milk at this stage still gives them heaps of nutrition. And I can post a little graphic if you like later on that actually says specifically how it meets their recommended daily intake of different minerals and vitamins. And so I just want to move away from that idea that breastfeeding at this stage is no longer beneficial, because that's a huge myth. And so if we consider all of those developmental things, then we need to realize, I guess, that we don't need to suddenly stop being responsive. It's not about, teaching them to be more independent by taking away us being responsive. Instead, they still need us to be responsive. They also need us to set some boundaries and allow them to, get to explore the world on their own as well. But we still need to be responsive. So I guess how this all plays out into sleep. Well, let's have a look at that. So routine starts to play a bigger role in toddlerhood. We go from a baby who, if we're being very child-led, we're feeding on demand, we're kind of sleeping on demand a lot of the time. When toddlers are in that stage where they're in that push-pull, like I was explaining, where they, they're kind of wanting to explore, but then they need you to be there as well and give them that sense of security. Routine starts to actually make toddlers feel quite secure in the world when they start to, when they're often feeling like it's a bit of a scary place, and some of that separation anxiety is still coming into play. So routine starts to play a bigger role when it comes to sleep. So that shift goes from being very child-led to maybe being a little bit more parent-led. But that doesn't mean we need to have strict schedules. We still can have a clear nighttime routine, a pattern to things, but we don't need to be super strict with the schedule. Having that routine is good for toddlers. We need to focus more on connection building. So if we think that a little one is still experiencing separation anxiety, and often at this stage, mums are going back to paid work. And it might not be the case for you, but a lot of mums are. And so little ones are often waking at night to seek connection. And that's where the feeding at night comes into play as well. Often it's a connection seeking behavior because they've been away from you during the day. If you've been at work, they've been at childcare, or family members had them. And so we just have to be mindful that connection seeking may be a factor in sleep, and to really look at that and see how can we build some connection. The next thing is that I think, to be honest, one of the main things to know is that sleep is still under the control of the sleep regulators. It's still biological. These other factors come into play, but when I work with clients who have toddlers, the biggest thing that I find that makes the difference with our sleep, no matter what else we do, it always comes back to the sleep pressure and the circadian clock and optimizing those. So if you're not familiar with those things, that I do have other videos in the group about them, but the sleep is regulated by the circadian rhythm that sets our day-night rhythm, and the sleep pressure, which is what builds over the course of the day, helps us get to sleep at night, helps us fall asleep nice and quickly again during the night. And what we find is that at around 12 to 13 months, and again at about 18 months, sleep needs change often, and they will suddenly reduce. And that's where we need to look at, keeping this sleep pressure and the circadian clock right, because if they don't accommodate that change in sleep needs, that reduction in sleep needs that they have, that's where you start to fall into these faulty patterns, and these regulators can get disrupted, and you start to see things like excessive night waking, split nights, false starts, early rising. All of those things come back to a root cause of the disruption to the sleep regulators. And it's also often a tricky age because they're transitioning away from 2 naps to 1 nap a lot of, at this commonly that 12 to 18 months. And so sleep can be tricky at that age. And so then we do need to look at what's happening with the sleep regulation system. And I know that that's going to be so different from what people are going to be telling you, that it's because you're bed sharing, it's because you're feeding to sleep, it's because you're, doing XYZ behavioral. Highly unlikely that those things are contributing, because I do have many clients who do all of those things and their babies don't wake excessively at night. That's not our root cause. Our root cause most of the time, obviously without any sort of medical issue, is that we don't have the sleep pressure circadian clock quite right. So the third point that I really wanted to cover today that you need to know is that it is okay to change things if it's not working for you. So although I'm saying that, feeding to sleep is unlikely to be your root cause of any sleep issues, bed sharing unlikely to be your root cause, you get to the point often at this age, especially, if you get to that 18-month mark where you want to see a change, you don't want to feed to sleep anymore, you've had enough now, or you don't want to bed share anymore, you've had enough now, and you're ready to transition away. And that's okay. You don't have to feel like, I just have to wait for them to grow out of it. I don't really recommend night weaning before 18 months because it is hard to do. But once you get to that 18-month mark in particular, it's okay to set these boundaries with our toddlers and say, okay, we want to make a change now, and we can do that gently. It is possible to do that gently. And when I work with clients around this, the first thing we always do is optimize these sleep regulators. So as I said, that circadian clock, that sleep pressure, because sometimes if we just make those adjustments, we don't need to do anything else. We find actually the excessive waking stops. So I'm okay with still feeding to sleep, twice a night. The early rising stops. So I'm fine with like bed sharing because little one's with me, but they're sleeping through, or whatever it may be. If we make that change first and we get that, real improvement, then oftentimes we don't need to change anything else and we're happy to do all the other things. But it may be that we optimize that first and then you still want to make a change, and that's fine. And there are ways to do that gently and transition away from those things gently. So, so I guess that would be the main things that I would say to know about toddler sleep. The first is expect that people are going to give you a whole lot of advice that even more than the baby stage is not really helpful, because there is a lack of understanding about child development and how the brain works. If you understand some of these developmental concepts, I think it shifts your thinking firstly, but it also allows you to see sleep through that developmental lens and see it in a different way. Secondly, know that sleep is still largely, it is under the control of biology, and it is unlikely that these other factors, these behavioral factors, are actually impacting the sleep. But finally, if you do want to make a change with these things, it is quite a good time, particularly from 18 months, but even leading up to 18 months to start to make these adjustments, and it can be done gently. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions about that, what your thoughts are. If this is something you've heard before, I'd love to know. And if you really do feel like you want to see a change, you need help to make these adjustments, or you want to, work towards a plan of moving away from what you're doing now and make a change, then do reach out to me. I do have a toddler package where we go through all of this, we come up with a plan, I follow up with you and make any adjustments that we need, and we can get you back on track. So absolutely, that's something that I can help you with if you're looking for some support. It doesn't look like there's any questions. I'm just going to quickly flick into my messages because there were a few. Oh, it's not going to let me while I'm on here. Let's have a look. Reducing excessive waking. What are the difference between toddler and baby sleep? So I guess in terms of biologically, there's not a difference between toddler and baby sleep. The science is still the same. It's still the same process for making adjustments. It's just that difference in the period of development and what to be aware of and what developmentally might be impacting sleep. And so that's why I've split my work between babies and toddlers, because developmentally, so I have a program for babies that looks at development for babies in the first year and looks at sleep through that lens. And then I work separately with toddlers because we look at toddlers differently for where they're at with things. And so that's the difference in my mind. The sleep's still the same, the method's still the same. We still have to look at things holistically. We still need to look for medical issues. We still need to look at feeding. We still need to look at your sleep and your rest. And those are all the factors that play into sleep and how it is going for your family, and we need to look at all of that. But in terms of actual differences between babies and toddlers, really it's just that developmental piece that we need to look at. Another question here that I had was, my daughter is 9.5 months. She's still in her cot in our room. I'd like to discuss when's a good time to move her to her own room. Okay, cool. So really this, like, where she sleeps is unlikely to have, I wouldn't say it's unlikely to have a huge impact, because it can, if there's a period of separation anxiety, it actually can be better to have them in with you. In terms of developmentally moving her into her own room, I probably wouldn't do it at 9.5 months. You're seeing the peak of separation anxiety at around the 10-month mark. And if you try and make a change then to like a separation, because for her it's a separation from you, I think that will make it harder. So I wouldn't try that until probably after 12 months. And also from the SIDS point of view, the guidelines do recommend that if you can keep them in the same room as you until 12 months, that's ideal. So from that point of view as well, then I probably wouldn't even try that until 12 months. Another question I had, I have a 20-month-old who still wakes up 2 to 100 times a night. Weaned him last week. The new thing that I noticed is that he is only sleeping in our arms, not in his cot. I'm not sure how to deal with it in terms of sleep pressure. I feel it's pretty high. When I put him to bed, he wakes up at 8 in the morning, naps, bedtime. Yeah, so look, anything like this, I would definitely look at the sleep pressure a bit more in terms of like, have we really got it right? Being mindful that sleep pressure is building over 3 or 4 days and it declines over 3 or 4 days. So we need to look at the big picture and not say, for example, like that last run up to bed, like that last little stretch. Often people talk about that. So we need to look at that sleep pressure. We also need to look at if you've already weaned him and you haven't seen a difference, I think it goes to show that it's not about the feeding to sleep that's the issue. It's not about a habit that's happening here. What we do need to look at is what's happening with the sleep regulators, you know, that at 20 months we're still seeing so many wakes at times, or is there something medically going on like an ear infection or some sleep apnea? So definitely reach out to me if you'd like to go over that in more detail. Cool. All right. That's all the questions I had. So, I don't see no one else has commented. So, I'm going to leave it there for today. If you'd like some support, do reach out to me via message and, we can chat some more. Okay, have a great day. Oh, wait, there is a question. Rachel said, definitely how I was thinking. I'm not ready for her to leave our room either. Just need to have a conversation with hubby and make sure we can be on the same page. Yeah, sure. And yeah, if you want to approach that conversation with your husband, I think coming at it from that developmental point of view of like where your little one's at developmentally and why you're thinking this, so that, you know, it's going to help you get on the same page if you can come together with your values. So, you know, if your values are that you both want to do what's right for your little one, that you both value being responsive, hopefully, then, you know, you can talk about why doing that this way is aligning with those values and connecting together in that way, because oftentimes we can get, you know, bogged down in the strategies and feel the pressure because other people are putting their ideas in. So it's that connecting with your values and going from there in terms of like getting on the same page with how you're going to approach your sleep situation at this stage. Cool. Alrighty. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.